I have served as senior medical officer aboard Station Vrolketh for 14 cycles. I have treated plasma burns and parasitic infestations, and one unfortunate ensign who got his tail caught in an airlock. I believed myself prepared for any medical emergency the universe could present. I was not prepared for the human. The morning began with standard crew physicals. Harlan, our recently assigned environmental systems technician, sat on the examination platform in Medical Bay and scratched at his arm while I reviewed his baseline readings on the floating diagnostic orb. The white walls hummed with ambient energy. Bioluminescent ceiling panels cast everything in soft blue light, and I had always found it calming. I would not find it calming for much longer. Harlan shifted on the platform and the material creaked under his weight. He was not a large human by their species standards, but he was dense in a way that surprised me. Compact, solid. His single pair of eyes wandered around the medical bay with obvious boredom, and his fingers drummed against his thigh in an irregular rhythm that made my tail twitch with irritation. So he said, while watching me circle him with my scanner, and any chance we can speed this up because the AC unit in Junction 7 is making a noise like a dying animal. And I promised Commander Vrelix I would have it fixed by midday. The examination will take as long as it takes, I replied, and my tail swished across the polished floor. I held the scanner closer to his exposed forearm. Human physiology is not well documented in our medical databases. I must be thorough. He shrugged. Both of his shoulders moved upward and then dropped. I had learned this gesture indicated acceptance, or perhaps indifference. Humans were difficult to read. They had no tail. Their skin did not change color. They simply sat there with their single pair of eyes and blinked occasionally, and their faces did subtle things I could not interpret. The diagnostic orb floated near. His chest impulsed as it collected data. I noted his temperature was elevated compared to his file from last month. I made a note. Likely nothing. Harlan yawned and the motion exposed his blunt teeth, and I observed the soft pink interior of his mouth with clinical detachment. Humans had such strange mouths. No fangs to speak of, no venom glands, just rows of flat grinding surfaces like prey animals. How they had become a spacefaring species remained one of the galaxy's persistent mysteries. Then I saw it. A droplet of liquid emerged from the skin of his forehead. I stopped moving. All four of my eyes locked onto the droplet as it grew and swelled and began to slide down toward his eyebrow. My scales, which had been a calm emerald, flickered to pale amber. Harlan, I said, and kept my voice steady through sheer medical professionalism, and are you aware that you are leaking? He reached up with one hand and wiped the droplet away with his palm. Oh yeah, it's warm in here. Another droplet. Formed. Then another. They were emerging from his skin and directly through it as though his body had sprung multiple tiny leaks. My tongue flicked out involuntarily. Does this happen often? What, sweating? He wiped his forehead again. His palm came away visibly wet. Sure, whenever it's hot. Your station runs warm, Doc. No offense, but you guys really need to fix the climate control. I set the scanner down on the examination platform because my hands had begun to tremble slightly. I was watching more droplets emerge. They were appearing on his arms now, his neck. The exposed skin at his collar showed a thin sheen of moisture. He was leaking from everywhere. I took a slow breath and steadied myself. Perhaps this was simply a minor malfunction of his integumentary system, a small rupture that could be sealed. I had bonding agents. I had synthetic skin patches. This was manageable. Then I watched a droplet roll down his arm and drip onto the examination platform and leave a small wet spot on the pristine surface. My tail went rigid. I see, I said in the measured tone I reserve for patients who did not yet know they were dying. And you say this is normal? Totally normal. He examined his damp palm with no apparent concern and then wiped it on his uniform trousers. Everybody sweats. I did not know what sweating was. The word had not been in any of my medical briefings, but I knew what I was seeing, and it was a patient whose structural integrity was compromising in real time and fluids escaping through his outer membrane, and he was simply sitting there talking about air conditioning. I moved to my communication panel with careful, unhurried steps. No need to alarm him. Zaxthorn, I said into the intercom, and please report to Medical Bay immediately. Is there a problem? Harlan asked. No, I lied. Merely a second opinion. I watched him while we waited. More droplets formed. They emerged from his hairline and his temples and the bridge of his nose. Some of them merged into larger droplets that carved wet trails down his face. He wiped at them occasionally with the back of his hand, as though brushing away minor inconveniences. How are you feeling? I asked. Hot, he said. Really hot, actually. Is the ventilation working in here? The ventilation is functioning within normal parameters. Well, your normal parameters are cooking me alive. He tugged at his collar. Seriously, when I fix Junction 7, I'm bumping this whole sector down about 15 degrees. You guys must like living in an oven. We prefer warmth, I said. We are Vethron. Yeah, I noticed the whole reptile thing. He gestured vaguely at me with one hand. No offense. None taken, I said, and I did not mention that I was watching his species dissolve in real time. The door slid open and Zaxthorn rushed in. He was young, and his horns still small, and his scales perpetually betraying his emotional state with shifts he could not control. Today they were a cheerful teal. That would not last. You called senior officer. He skidded to a stop beside me, and his tail swung and nearly knocked over a tray of instruments. I was cataloging the... He saw Harlan. He saw the liquid sliding down Harlan's face. His scales went from teal to amber to deep crimson in approximately 2 seconds. I had never seen color transition that fast outside of a laboratory setting. His melting, Zaxthorn announced, and his volume was entirely inappropriate for a medical professional. I am not melting, Harlan said. His face is coming off. Zaxthorn's tail thrashed sideways and connected with a shelf of medical containers. 3 of them crashed to the floor. He did not notice. His 4 eyes were fixed on Harlan with the kind of horror usually reserved for hull breaches. Senior officer, we need containment protocols, and we need Zaxthorn. I placed one hand on his shoulder. His scales were hot with panic. Calm yourself. Calm. Hes liquefying. Harlan sighed. He reached up and wiped his face again. This, I realized, was not helping. It's just sweat, he said. You know, perspiration and thermoregulation. He looked between us and apparently expected recognition. He received none. It's how humans cool down. We excrete water through our skin to lower body temperature. Basic biology. Zaxthorn turned to me. His inner eyelids were fluttering so rapidly, I thought he might be having a seizure. Did he just say he excretes through his skin, and on purpose? That is what I heard, yes. Through his skin. I'm sitting right here, Harlan said. And yes, through my skin. It's not a big deal. Look, can I go now? Because the Junction 7 unit really needs. You cannot go anywhere. I stepped between him and the door, and my tail rigid with authority. You are experiencing significant fluid loss. We must determine the cause and provide treatment. The cause is that your station is hot. He gestured with both hands at the room around us. Fix the AC and problem solved. That's literally my job, which I would be doing right now if the temperature is optimal for Vethron physiology, I said. Well, it's not optimal for human physiology. It's like a sauna in here. He was still producing moisture. More of it now. His entire face had a wet sheen. His neck glistened under the blue lighting. Zaxthorn made a sound I had not heard before, a high-pitched whine from somewhere deep in his throat. It's getting worse. He was correct. The rate of fluid loss had increased. Harlan, I said, and I must insist you remain still. We need to run additional scans. We need to determine why your body is expelling itself. I'm not expelling myself. He stood up from the examination platform. Bad move. The motion apparently accelerated whatever catastrophic process was occurring inside him, because now I could see dark patches forming on his uniform. Moisture was seeping through the fabric at his chest and his back and under his arms. His inner fluids were escaping through his clothing. Zaxthorn grabbed my arm. His claws dug in. Senior officer, he's dissolving. I've read about this. Some species have a defense mechanism where they liquefy to escape predators. Humans do not liquefy, I said, though. I was no longer certain. Then explain that. He pointed at Harlan's shirt where the wet patches were visibly spreading. Harlan looked down at himself. Oh, come on. These are my good overalls. He plucked at the damp fabric with apparent irritation. This is what I'm talking about. Climate control is completely shot. It shouldn't be this hot in the medical bay. The temperature is standard. The temperature is barbaric. He grabbed the hem of his shirt. You know what, and forget it. If I'm going to be stuck in here, I'm at least getting comfortable. I did not know what he intended. I could not have anticipated it. He pulled the shirt over his head and removed it. For one eternal moment, Zaxthorn and I stared at the human's exposed torso. Liquid coated nearly every surface. It ran in small rivulets down his chest. It pooled in the hollow of his throat. His entire upper body was slick with the fluid leaking from within him. He was melting. He was standing there and holding his shirt in one hand and completely unbothered by the fact that he was actively melting. I noticed details I wished I had not noticed. The fluid had a slight sheen to it. It reflected the blue bioluminescent light from the ceiling panels. Small droplets continued to form even as I watched, and they emerged from pores I could barely see and joined the rivers already flowing down his skin. The hair on his chest was matted with moisture. His arms dripped steadily onto the floor. Zaxthorn made a choking sound. I could not look away. Harlan used his balled-up shirt to wipe his face, and then his chest and the fabric came away dark with absorbed fluid. He examined it with a frown. Great, he said. This is definitely going to stain. Zaxthorn's legs folded beneath him. He collapsed sideways and his tail struck the examination platform as he went down and his scales locked in a shade of crimson. I had only seen in textbooks describing fatal shock responses. He had fainted. Harlan looked down at Zaxthorn's unconscious form and then back up at me. Fluid dripped from his chin onto the floor. Is he okay? Harlan asked. I opened my mouth. No sound emerged. My scales had gone gray. I stood there and stared at the human, and the human stared back at me. And somewhere between us, Zaxthorn lay unconscious on the floor, with his tail twitching occasionally. The only sound was the soft hum of the diagnostic equipment and the quiet drip, drip, drip of fluid falling from Harlan's body onto the polished surface below. He was still producing more of it. I watched a droplet form at the tip of his elbow and hang there for a moment and then release and fall and join the small puddle that was accumulating beneath him. The puddle was growing. It had started as a few scattered drops, and now it was spreading outward in an irregular circle and reflecting the blue ceiling lights like a tiny contaminated lake. Harlan followed my gaze downward. He looked at the puddle. He looked at me. Yes, sorry about that, he said. You got a towel or something? A towel? You know, for the floor. He gestured at the spreading moisture with his wadded-up shirt. I don't want to make a mess. I wanted to laugh. The sound built in my chest and threatened to emerge as something between a hiss and a shriek. He was concerned about the floor. His body was actively ejecting its internal fluids through every available surface, and he was worried about making a mess. Harlan, he said. That's your name, right? Harlan. Yeah. Harlan, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I stepped closer to him, and my claws clicked against the wet floor. I need you to understand that what is happening to you is not normal. It's completely normal. It is not. I pointed at the puddle. That is not normal. You are losing fluid at an alarming rate. Your body is rejecting its own moisture. This is a medical emergency. He blinked at me. His single pair of eyes showed something that might have been confusion or might have been amusement, and I could not tell which because humans did not have proper emotional indicators. Doc, he said slowly, have you never seen someone sweat before? I have never seen anyone do what you are doing. He ran one hand through his hair, and the motion sent a small spray of droplets outward. Several of them landed on my arm. I flinched backwards so violently that my tail knocked against the examination platform and sent the diagnostic orb spinning away. The droplets were warm and wet and sitting on my scales like tiny accusations. Sorry, Harlan said. Didn't mean to get you. I looked at my arm. I looked at the moisture sitting there. I looked back at Harlan. What is this substance? I asked. Sweat? What is it made of? Mostly water. Some salt. He shrugged again with that infuriating casual gesture. A few other things, I guess. I don't know. It's just sweat. You excrete water and salt through your skin. Yes. Deliberately. Well, not deliberately. It's automatic. My body does it to cool down. He wiped his face again. Like I said, thermoregulation. I needed to sit down. There was a chair near the diagnostic station, and I moved toward it and lowered myself carefully. My tail curled around the chair leg for stability. On the floor, Zaxthorn groaned softly but did not wake. Let me understand this correctly, I said. Your body expels water through your outer membrane as a cooling mechanism. Yes, and this is normal for humans. Completely normal. Everyone does it, he paused. Well, every human anyway. Do you guys not sweat? We do not excrete through our skin. How do you cool down then? We seek shade, I said. We reduce activity. We find cool environments. He stared at me. That's it. That is sufficient. He laughed. The sound was sharp and sudden, and it startled me. My scales flickered amber briefly before I controlled them. No wonder you're all so slow, Harlan said. You can't regulate your own temperature. You're like, and he paused and searched for a word in lizards. I am aware of the comparison. Sorry. He held up both hands. Not trying to be offensive. It's just that humans can go from sitting still to full sprint, and our bodies automatically adjust to keep us from overheating. Sweating is how we do that. It's actually really efficient. Efficient. I looked at the puddle beneath him, which had now spread to approximately half a meter in diameter. You are losing significant amounts of water. How is that efficient? I drink more water. I closed all four of my eyes. I needed a moment. When I opened them again, Harlan had moved to Zaxthorn's unconscious form and was crouching beside him. More fluid dripped from his torso onto the floor near my colleague's head. Should we move him or something? Harlan asked. Hez kind of in the way. Do not touch him. I was just going to. Do not. I rose from the chair. Your fluid is getting on him. Harlan looked down. A droplet fell from his chin and landed on Zaxthorn's shoulder. The scales there were still deep crimson. Oops, Harlan said. I moved forward and grabbed Zaxthorn under his arms and dragged him away from the dripping human. His tail scraped across the wet floor and left a streak through the accumulated moisture. I propped him against the far wall and positioned him carefully. When I turned back, Harlan had picked up my scanner and was examining it with apparent curiosity. Cool tech, he said. This is way nicer than the stuff we had on my last posting. Please put that down. He set it on the examination platform. Then he wiped his forehead with his hand and wiped his hand on his trousers, which were already dark with moisture at the thighs. Look, he said. I appreciate the concern. Really. But I'm fine. This is just what humans do when we're hot. If you want me to stop sweating, you need to let me fix your climate control. I cannot release you in this condition. What condition? I am the picture of health. He spread his arms wide and the motion sent more droplets flying. I just need to cool down. That's all. I watched another rivulet of fluid trace its way down his chest and disappear beneath the waistband of his trousers. My tongue flicked out and tasted the air. There was a salt smell now and something else, and something organic and unfamiliar. The smell of a human dissolving from the inside out. I needed to contact Commander Vrelix. This situation had escalated beyond my medical expertise and into territory that required command authority. A crew member was experiencing catastrophic fluid loss and refused to acknowledge the severity of his condition. I moved to the communication panel and kept one eye on Harlan at all times. He had wandered over to the viewport and was staring out at the stars while absently scratching his chest. More fluid emerged wherever his fingers touched. Commander Vrelix said into the panel, "Please report to Medical Bay immediately. We have a situation." The response came after a brief pause. Her voice was deep and resonant with the authority of someone who had commanded this station for 9 cycles. Define situation. I glanced at Harlan. He had found a medical pamphlet on a nearby shelf and was reading it while dripping steadily onto the floor. The human is experiencing a medical emergency, I said. He requires immediate intervention. On my way. I closed the channel and turned back to find Harlan watching me. His face was still wet. His hair was plastered to his forehead. The puddle beneath him had grown larger. You called the commander, he said. Yes. Because I am sweating? Because you are dying. He made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. Doc, I have to be honest with you, this is getting a little ridiculous. I am not dying. I am hot. Those are different things. You are losing fluid at an alarming rate, and I will replace it by drinking water. He pointed at the sink in the corner of the medical bay. You got cups. I did not answer because the doors had opened and Commander Vrlix entered. She was impressive even by Vethron standards. Taller than me by nearly half a meter, and her scales were a deep forest green that spoke of age and experience. Battle scars marked her arms and face, and her horns swept back in elegant curves. Her four eyes swept the room and took in everything at once. The unconscious Zaxthorn against the wall, the scattered medical containers on the floor, the puddles of fluid, the shirtless, dripping human. Her scales flickered amber. Report, she said. I straightened. Commander, the human Harlan arrived for his routine physical examination approximately 30 standard minutes ago. During the examination, I observed him beginning to excrete fluid through his skin. The excretion has continued and accelerated despite my attempts at intervention. He claims this is normal for his species, but the rate of fluid loss is inconsistent with survival. Commander Vrlix turned to look at Harlan. Her tail was very still, which I knew meant she was processing significant information. Harlan raised one hand in greeting. Hey, Commander. Sorry about all this. I keep telling the doc here that I am fine, but she will not listen. You are leaking, the commander said. Sweating. It is called sweating. I see. She moved closer to him and her claws clicked against the wet floor. And this sweating? It is normal. Completely normal. Happens all the time. Your station runs hot. My body is cooling itself down. That is all this is. Commander Vrlix turned to me. Is this accurate? I do not know, Commander. Human medical files are incomplete, but the rate of fluid loss seems. Dangerous, Zaxthorn said weakly from against the wall. We all turned. He had regained consciousness and was struggling to sit up. His scales were still crimson, though they had faded slightly toward orange. It is dangerous, he continued. I saw it. He was dissolving. His internal fluids were escaping through his membrane. He gestured at Harlan with a shaky hand. Look at him. He is still melting. I am not melting, Harlan said. Zaxthorn pointed at the floor. Then explain the puddle. Harlan looked down. The puddle had grown considerably. It now extended nearly a meter in all directions. Okay, he admitted. That is a lot of sweat. Commander Vrlix made a decision. Her scales shifted to a determined blue-green. Initiate quarantine protocols. I want this human contained until we determine exactly what is happening to him. What Harlan said. The lights changed. The ambient blue shifted to amber warning colors. A soft alarm began to pulse. Quarantine initiated. A computerized voice announced, Medical bay is now sealed. No entry or exit permitted. Harlan stared at the sealed doors and then at the three Vethron who were all watching him with varying degrees of horror. You have got to be kidding me, he said. Commander Vrlix stepped back from him and positioned herself near the door. Zaxthorn pressed himself against the wall with his scales cycling between red and orange. I remained by the diagnostic station with my hand hovering near the emergency medical kit. The human is contained, the commander said. Now, explain precisely what is happening to your body. Harlan wiped his face. His hand came away wet. Okay, he said slowly. Let me try this again. Humans are warm-blooded. Our bodies maintain a constant internal temperature. When we get too hot, our bodies produce sweat, which is mostly water and salt. The sweat evaporates from our skin, and the evaporation cools us down. This has been happening since humans evolved millions of years ago. It is completely natural and completely harmless. There was a long pause. You evolved this, Commander Vrlix said. Yes. But why, Zaxthorn demanded. Why would any species evolve to leak? Fluid loss is dangerous. Dehydration kills. Because it works, Harlan said. Humans can run for hours in direct sunlight because we can cool ourselves while we move. We hunted prey by chasing them until they overheated and collapsed. Sweating made us one of the most effective persistence predators on our planet. There was another long pause. You hunted by making things overheat, Commander Vrlix said. Yes. while you yourself remained cool. Yes, by leaking. Harlan pinched the bridge of his nose. Yes, by leaking. It is not leaking, it is sweating, but yes, that is essentially correct. I felt my scales shift without my permission. The color drained from emerald to something closer to gray. Commander Vrelix's tail had begun to twitch. You are pursuit predators, the commander said. Yes. Who can regulate your own temperature? Yes. Indefinitely. I mean, I need to drink water eventually, but yes. Mostly indefinitely. The silence stretched. The amber quarantine lights pulsed. Fluid continued to drip from Harlan's body and join the spreading puddle below. Commander Vrelix turned to me. Her scales had gone pale. Get me everything we have on human physiology. I already checked. The files are incomplete. Then contact the Galactic Database. Submit an emergency query. She looked back at Harlan. We need to understand exactly what we are dealing with here. You are dealing with a guy who is very hot and very annoyed, Harlan said. I am not sick. I am not dying. I am not a threat. I am just an environmental systems technician who really needs to fix your climate control before I sweat through my boots. He lifted one foot. His boot made a squelching sound. See, he said. This is getting ridiculous. Commander Vrelix studied him. You claim this sweating is harmless? It is harmless, and you can stop doing it. If I cool down, yes. The sweating will stop. She turned to me. Reduce the temperature in medical bay by 10 degrees. Commander Zaxthorn protested. We cannot simply do it. I moved to the environmental controls. My claws trembled slightly as I input the commands. Somewhere above us, the cooling vents opened wider. Cold air began to flow into the room. Harlan closed his eyes. Oh, thank God, he said. Finally. We watched him. All three of us stood motionless and observed the human as the temperature dropped. The amber quarantine lights pulsed. The cold air circulated, and slowly and gradually the fluid production decreased. The droplets forming on his skin grew smaller and less frequent. The rivers running down his chest slowed to trickles and then stopped. The sheen covering his body began to fade. Within 5 minutes, he was dry. See, Harlan said. He spread his arms. Completely fine. The sweating stops when I cool down. Just like I said. I exchanged glances with Commander Vrelix. Her scales had shifted from pale gray back toward green, though they had not returned fully to normal. He stopped melting, Zaxthorn said quietly. He actually stopped. I was never melting. You stopped, though, Harlan sighed. Yes, I stopped. Because sweating is a temporary response to heat. When the heat goes away, the sweating goes away. This is basic human biology. Human files are classified as minimal contact species. Commander Vrelix said, we have basic anatomical data, social customs, communication protocols. She looked at the puddle on the floor. We did not have information about the leaking. Sweating? Sweating. She said the word carefully, as though testing an unfamiliar food. Harlan ran his hand through his hair. So he said, does this mean I can get out of quarantine now? Commander Vrelix considered him for a long moment. Then she moved to the communication panel and input her authorization code. Quarantine lifted, the computer announced. Medical bay access restored. The amber lights shifted back to blue. Harlan immediately moved toward the door. Great. Wonderful. If anyone needs me, I will be in environmental control, finally doing my actual job. He paused at the threshold. And I am setting the whole station temperature down by at least 5 degrees. Maybe 10. You can submit a formal complaint if you want, but I am not going through this again. He walked out. The doors closed behind him, the ears warm. 3 of us stood in silence. The medical bay was a disaster. Puddles covered the floor. Containers were scattered everywhere. Zaxthorn spoke first. Commander, he said. His voice was shaky. Did that human just tell us that his species evolved to hunt by overheating their prey? That is what he said, yes. And they can regulate their own temperature indefinitely, so he claimed. Zaxthorn turned to me. Senior officer, when you examined him, his internal body temperature. What was it? I checked my records. 37.2 degrees standard, and that is normal for humans. According to his file, yes. Zaxthorn made a small sound of distress. That is warmer than our blood, he said. They run hot all the time. They are always like that. Commander Vrelix moved to the viewport and stared out at the stars. I am going to request an updated briefing on human capabilities, she said. A comprehensive one. That seems wise, I agreed. She turned back to Faces. He said they hunted by chasing prey until the prey overheated. Yes, Commander, while the humans kept running, because they could cool themselves down by leaking. Sweating, I corrected automatically. She looked at me. Her scales had gone very still. I do not like the implications of that, she said. Neither did I. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the environmental system cycle to a new setting. The ambient temperature in the medical bay dropped another degree. I found that I did not mind. 3 hours later, I received a station-wide notification. The environmental controls in Junction 7 had been repaired. The station temperature had been reduced by 8 degrees standard across all sectors. The notification was signed by Harlan. Underneath his name, he had added a note. You are welcome. Try not to panic next time someone gets a little warm. I stared at the notification for a long moment. Then I closed it and returned to my work. Behind me, Zaxthorn was mopping the floor. His scales had finally returned to their normal teal, but every few minutes they would flicker briefly to amber. I did not blame him.